Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to remind you that we will be moving to motions at 4:45 today, so please be ready for them. And now I'm absolutely delighted that we've been joined today by David Lammy MP, Shadow Justice Secretary and author of the Lammy Independent Review into the Treatment of and Outcomes for Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Individuals in the Criminal Justice System. Questions have been submitted prior today, so I will ask these on the members' behalf. Okay. So the first question. Black staff within probation have to work hard to make progress, and in doing so often have to step outside their comfort zone to succeed, and more importantly face increasing isolation as they move up the promotional level. Given your own experience, what advice would you offer them in meeting the challenges of promotion, and what message have you for the organisation to aid black staff in their endeavours? And this is from Maureen Vernon, our National Black Rep.
Well, look, let me just say it's fantastic to join you this afternoon and to thank for Break Probation for all that you do. I'm really clear, no nonsense. Systemic racism exists. The issues that we saw that led to the murder of George Floyd are not unique to the United States. It's fashionable for Europeans to look across the pond and say, isn't there racism much worse than ours? But those issues exist amongst us, and I'm very proud of the work that I did on my criminal justice review. I looked right across the criminal justice system, and what we found was that there was disproportionality at every single stage of the criminal justice system. Now, I raised significant issues on diversity and on retention and on leadership in the criminal justice system. I was particularly challenging in relation to our judiciary. You'll understand that we still would like to see some more female judges in the system. Poor old Brenda Hale was getting quite lonely on the Supreme Court, as well as ethnic minority judges, and we've got a long way to go. I raised issues in the prison service. Where are the cadre of black prison governors? There ought to be. It's a great job, and they don't really exist. Traditionally, it's probably right to say that probation had historically been an area that was perhaps better at issues of racial equality than other parts of the criminal justice system. But of course, in this period of dramatic change because of the botched, ridiculous Chris Grayling reforms, there's been tremendous change in the probation system. I believe in targets and goals. I believe in leadership, actually making it clear that for advancement in an organisation, you have to take diversity seriously. And, you know, there ought to be an ambition for more senior leadership roles for black and ethnic minority staff, and that ought to be spelt out and be claimed. Of course, it takes mentoring. Of course, it takes training, but that shouldn't be the knee-jerk response, because it takes more than that. In the end, it also takes a degree of positive discrimination. That's my belief.
Next question is from Nicola Taylor-Ebong, the Family Court section. Can you give your view on the impact of COVID-19 on the family justice system, and as a consequence, the unprecedented workloads for CAFCAS, and what should be done about it?
Well, I think there was a lot of enthusiasm at the beginning that somehow we would be able to deal with the family court cases backlog virtually. And it became clear that when you're dealing with significant issues of the care system, adoption, referrals, much of that could not be done actually virtually. So we have got tremendous pressures and problems in the family law justice system. We also know, and there was also much comment about increased domestic violence increased pressures in home, real problems for children in homes where there's a significant risk of dysfunctionality and violence particularly. And of course, the people that were making the referrals, particularly from our schools, all of that was down considerably. Well, the schools have gone back, and that is being readdressed. And of course, that does mean an increased workload for CAFCAS. It's an issue that, you know, trust me, I'm taking up with Robert Buckland on your behalf. Very, very keen, by the way, as the official opposition, to do my job, to hear from you officially or unofficially, where you feel you can let me know what's going on the ground. And obviously in the visits that I'm now able to do, I wasn't able to get out in the way that I would have liked, but I am now able to get out, and not everybody is home. You know, I'm very happy to come and see staff and talk to you a bit more about the situation on the ground.
From Katie Lomas, our National Chair, and Keith Stockhold, our National Vice Chair, can you commit the Labour Party to campaign for the probation service to be removed from the prison-centric HMPPS and civil service and allow greater autonomy and financial governance so that it can once again excel at providing world-class services?
Well, look, let me say, the government seems intent on increasing prison numbers. They're building more prisons, and they seem to want prison numbers to go up. The prison population 20 years ago was about 45,000. It's gone up to just under 85,000. It's doubled. At the same time, recidivism rates are the worst in Europe. It's worse and worse and worse. And actually, for black prison populations, it's particularly bad, with over 65% of prisoners coming back to prison. So something isn't working. And the key ingredient that is not working, the system is broken, is the probation service, is rehabilitation. And clearly, the picture from prison gate back into community is dire in terms of housing, in terms of benefits, in terms of access to skills and employment. It's a dire, dire picture. And this was a key component of what probation did. In my review, I was looking at the work that used to go on in preparation for pre-sentence reports, and how, in fact, judges who weren't always connected to communities on the ground could get so much from probation staff who were allowed the time and the expertise to go into the offender's home to gather up that report. By God, that's a thing of the past. So of course I believe in a probation service like the one we used to have, because the one we've got now isn't working. And that's not just rhetoric, that's empirically true. It's been so dismantled. A public probation service, we're some way off the next general election. You know, the Labour Party lost the last one quite badly. And so quite rightly, it's not, none of us on the front bench are setting policy in 2020, knowing that we don't face an election until 2024. And my job is to hold the government to task of what they've now said they will do to rebuild that probation service. And let's see where they get to on this journey before I make my commitment as to, I don't think they're going to succeed, I've got to tell you. But so you've got where I think we're going to get to, but before I make my commitment, which will be around 2023, 2024.
So how would you promote more effective work with women and minorities in the criminal justice system in particular, but the probation service specifically? And do you agree that the next urgent thing to reverse from the Offender Rehabilitation Act 2014 is the post-sentence supervision requirement, which is exacerbating the harm caused by short custodial sentences? And that's from Sue McConnell, Napo, Cymru.
Thank you, Sue. And let's work backwards. I don't believe in short sentences. They don't work. I thought we'd achieved a consensus on this, and it looks like we've gone backwards. Even the early release scheme that Robert Buckland said he announced with great fanfare in April when he was going to reduce the prison system to deal with coronavirus, he backtracked on because there were Tories from red wall seats who stood against it. Of course we don't want women in this situation. It's not good for anyone. Let me be clear. You know, I've been meeting female offenders for many, many years, and I just want to say some truths that I hope, you know, connect with you. The first thing is that I'm still to meet a woman who's ever been in the criminal justice system if it wasn't because of a man who pimped her, who beat her, who abused her, a husband, a partner. And therefore, I think that we ought to be making a real commitment in this country to reduce the amount of women in prison, just as we reduced the amount of young offenders under the Labour government of Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. We can reduce the amount of women in the system, and short custodial sentences will not achieve that. Don't do that. When I look at the women that I met in doing my review, I was so worried about Black, Asian and minority ethnic women in the system. They talked a lot about stereotypes that they felt they were getting from judges, particularly, who had powerful stereotypes about what it means to be a Black woman or a Muslim woman. When I met Muslim women, they were some of the most vulnerable people in the system, often ostracized from their families, not having visitation within prison, and having not able to go back to the communities they were from when they came out of prison. My God, what a job for probation in that context. A very, very serious and very, very professional job indeed. So I'm absolutely support the thrust of what you said. I've actually said I tried to do my best in relation to women in the criminal justice system in my review, but I thought it could have been a whole separate review in of itself, building on the work of Jean Colston all those years ago.
Thank you. The next one is an amalgamation of questions from Ellen Ward of Durham, Julie Hopton of Durham Tees Valley, and the Napo national officers. We have only had one cost of living increase in the last 10 years, and staff are working with very high workloads and under extreme pressure. The new MPS pay scale was decided in 2018. An automatic pay progression was agreed last year as a result of the employer not introducing the competency-based pay progression framework. Why have MPS staff not been paid their progression, which was due in April?
Well, I've got this deeply unsatisfactory answer here from Lucy Fraser that my good colleague Lynn Brown got out of her, who's obviously Shadow Minister for Prisons and Probation. And Lucy said the 2018 agreement was reached with the National Probation Service, trade unions on pay modernisation. This replaces automatic pay progression with a new scheme that will link pay to professional development. Development of the scheme has been delayed. Clearly, this is a scheme that all parties want to get right, and therefore we are working with the trade union colleagues to implement it as soon as possible. Are they? I don't know. We are committed to ensuring that the MPS receive their annual pay award at the earliest possible point during 2020-2021. When the pay award is made, it will be backdated to the 1st of April 2020. So it's an incredibly vague answer, and I will be holding it to account, and so will Lynn. Trust me on it. You know, I believe in a uniform service that is properly paid, properly professional, has the respect it deserves. And there have been issues in the prison service. There are absolutely issues in the probation service. And you have my commitment, leading the Labour team, that we get that. We will hold the government to account, work with you to challenge them where we can, and see what we need to correct when it comes up to our turn to put our offer to the country and say we want to run it.
From Suzanne McCarthy of the East Coast branch. Mr. Lammy, are you aware that judges and magistrates have recently indicated the value they placed on the pre-sentence reports that they were used to receiving from qualified probation officers before the systemised versions were brought in? Have you ever seen any? And when do you propose to reinstate this vital form of information sharing and risk management?
It was in my review. Thank God they've finally acknowledged it. You have my undertaking that I will reintroduce them if I become Shadow Justice. It's essential. You can't do the job without them, and you certainly can't do the job when our judiciary don't have that expertise. It really is only probation that can give them that expertise and that understanding. So I was very clear about this in my review, and you could expect me to follow through. But I'm pleased, I guess, 3 or 4 years later that they're finally picking up with what I said.
Good. Okay. In the wake of the killing of Sergeant Matt Ratner, public employees in every emergency service face the daily challenge of violence at work, and probation is no exception, as we hear of threats to staff and incidents in the probation workplaces. What steps would a Labour government take to protect probation staff who have to deal with difficult and violent clients on a daily basis? And that's from Keith Stockhold, our National Vice Chair.
Labour colleagues have been clear on this. We've been raising in Parliament, how do we protect the protectors, and how do we continue to legislate in this area to make it absolutely unacceptable to harm anyone in the course of their public service, and that includes probation staff. I totally get that probation staff are often the hidden heroes, frontline workers who do a very important job, often forgotten. And this has been a period in which we have seen frontline workers celebrated, but too often where we recognise the roles that our nurses play, for example, that our teachers play, probation staff, prison staff were left out of the mix, and they have to be protected, and you have that undertaking from me and all Labour colleagues who get this and have been raising it in Parliament.
And from Sue Hassel, Family Court Section, what is Labour's position in respect of moving CAFCAS from the MOJ to the DFE, and what is Labour's plans on the role and funding of CAFCAS?
I'm open to this. I can't say it's something that I've considered in great depth before, so I'm open to it, and I'm happy to hear the case. You know, when you look across the tribunal system, for example, there have been those who said that, for example, employment tribunals could be with the department that dealt with employment, and that's not traditionally been the case. But I think CAFCAS definitely comes under the umbrella of safeguarding children, and so there are very clear reasons why it should have a very deep relationship with DFE, so I'm open to it.
Okay. Mr. Lammy, you've been giving us some very clear answers, and we've actually we were only planning 6 questions and we've gone through 8 because of your concise answers. So I just wondered if you would spend 5 or 6 minutes just talking about how you see the future of the probation service.
Well, look, let me just say that I believe in a public service. When I look across the criminal justice system, probation is not, is one of the areas of the criminal justice system that's been perhaps the most damaged over this last period of austerity, no doubt about it. And I want to reduce prison numbers. I believe that it's quite right for society to deal with and to have views on offending behaviour, but it's also the case that offending behaviour should not always result in a criminal justice outcome. You can deal with offending behaviour through the health system and a public health approach. You can deal with offending behaviour through the education system and an education approach, and actually a lot of those approaches are cheaper. It's unlikely that you're going to be able to do that without the work of a valued probation service that understands rehabilitation. I hope that empirically that this can be better understood by the public over this next while. It's why when I've challenged Robert Buckland, I've talked about recidivism rates rising, and I talked about the importance of second chances when we had our short debate on probation in the House. And so I value that. I recognise, though, that we're at least 4.5 years away from me getting anywhere near the levers of power to actually implement or do anything. and the Labour Party's got a tall task to get back to power, because at the moment we're down by 80 seats. So in the end, the key for me over this next while is not a vision, particularly of what I will do, because it's a long way away for you on the ground. It's to work with you on what's happening now. And unlike in the court system, unlike in the prison system, CPS, or even in policing, your area of the criminal justice system is the system undergoing the most change. It had the most change with Chris Grayling reform, and then it's got more change to come. So I've got to stay close to with my ear close to the ground, and close to you on what's really happening on the ground and on the front line. That's going to be harder over this next year because of coronavirus. By the way, I don't think coronavirus is somehow going to evaporate in March. I mean, whatever Boris says, I think it is well with us for 2021. And even if we get a vaccine, on the basis of the inability to get a test, I don't believe this government's going to get those vaccines out very quickly to the general population. So it's with us for 2021. I can't be with you in the same way that I would be if we didn't have coronavirus. So we've got to stay close for me to fully understand the implementation of those reforms that Buckland announced a few months ago, which may well end up being slightly delayed, actually, because of the time that we're in. And then, as I say, as we get to 23, 24, to be very clear on what Labour's vision will be going forward. But because I'm passionate, frankly, about really wrestling with problems that we've now built up in the system over decades, bits of the system that are broken. The youth justice system in Britain is broken. You know, out of the gates work is broken. Much that's going on in our prisons is not where it needs to be. And so none of those things can I fix without the probation service being at full strength. That's how I would put it.
Lammy, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you taking this time to talk with us and engage with our members. We really look forward to continuing to work with you to highlight the issues relating to the justice system and our very much prized National Probation Service. So thank you very much.
Thank you. See you again. I wish I could see you in person. This is not the most ideal way to meet, I've got to say, but I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you're continuing to do. I have been able to get to some prisons where I've met probation staff. I've always met probation staff that in the offender management teams in our prisons, and so I have been able to see, even though it's been tougher in the last few weeks, some of what you've been up to. Thank you very much.